Okay, this is a wild story involving the Jehovah's Witnesses, which I don't talk about that often, but in this case, it's very relevant. Turns out they are going after one of their longtime critics for a wild reason. And I'm not going to give that away just yet, but I'll explain it in just a bit. Here's what you need to know about the Jehovah's Witnesses as it pertains to this story. Do you all remember a few years ago when the Pennsylvania Attorney General, at the time it was Josh Shapiro, he's currently the governor, but he was the Attorney General, and he did this grand jury investigation into the Catholic diocese across the state of Pennsylvania. And that grand jury report, when it came out a few years ago, it was a bombshell. It had so many details about how the Catholic Church had committed, all these allegations against children, what priests did to children. It had all these details. It had so many stories about how the church covered it up. It was such a damning report that so many other states decided to do the same thing. They had their own grand jury investigations into the Catholic Church. And it was like Spotlight, but 20 years later and even bigger than the first time. So that's what Josh Shapiro did with the Catholic Church. But what you may not have seen in the news is that in 2020, Shapiro also opened a grand jury investigation into the Jehovah's Witnesses. Look at the timestamp on this. It's February of 2020. Pennsylvania opens grand jury investigation into Jehovah's Witnesses cover-up of that abuse. And so they were investigating what the Jehovah's Witnesses were doing, just like they did with the Catholic Church. So this was looking into congregations across the state. Were people accused of doing bad things within those congregations? Were the congregations and the denomination covering them up in any way? And one of the reasons Shapiro was even doing this is because The Atlantic had published a story just a year prior. Look at the dateline on this. This is March of 2019. And look at the headline: a secret database of child abuse, of former Jehovah's Witnesses using stolen documents to expose allegations that the religion has kept hidden for decades. It turns out, according to this whistleblower, the Jehovah's Witness had kept basically a spreadsheet of people in their congregations who had been accused of these heinous crimes, but they didn't tell anybody about it, and they sure as hell did not go public with that information. Someone must have leaked it to this whistleblower, and now he was blowing the whistle. So this is why, one of the reasons Shapiro decided to investigate the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So the name of that whistleblower in that story was a guy named Mark O'Donnell. He's one of many former Jehovah's Witnesses who now spends his time trying to sound the alarm, not just about why the religion is wrong, because like all religions, it is wrong, but why that denomination tries to keep this sort of thing hidden, why they cover it up, why people who support those congregations are helping the denomination cover this stuff up. He actually told journalists he was interviewed by Josh Shapiro's investigators for that the grand jury thing, largely because he's the go-to guy. If you're a leader in the Jehovah's Witnesses, but you got some secrets, everyone kind of knows Mark is the guy you talk to if you want to make sure this stuff gets out without implicating yourself, right? So that's what Mark O'Donnell was doing. And the amazing thing is that in 2022, 2 years after this investigation began, Josh Shapiro announced, look at this, Attorney General Shapiro announces charges against 4 men for sexual abuse across Pennsylvania. That grand jury investigation and the work Mark had done had actually led to 4 people getting charged with these crimes. And according to Shapiro at the time, that was 4 men charged with abusing 19 people, including their own children. And in the years to come, more charges would follow. Right now, I believe 16 people associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses in Pennsylvania have been charged in these investigations. So just a damning story, a horrible cover up. And as you can imagine, if let's say you're a normal, good Jehovah's Witness who's like watching this all unfold, you're thinking, oh no, this looks very bad. What if you're the leader of one of these congregations and you're thinking, they're going to investigate my people too, aren't they? Well, what am I supposed to do if federal or state investigators come to my door and they want information? Like, what am I supposed to hand over? Am I supposed to cooperate? How am I supposed to cooperate? All of that stuff. So in February of 2023, representatives from 11 Jehovah's Witnesses congregations, specifically in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, they decided to get on a conference call together. And they had 2 lawyers who were going to join them on this call. And there's nothing weird about this, because on the surface, it looks like, okay, these Jehovah's Witnesses leaders want to chat with lawyers about, hey, what do we do in this situation? What are we supposed to do when investigators talk to us? It would be nice to have a lawyer say, here's what you got to do. Here's what they're not allowed to ask you about. I mean, there's nothing weird about that. So I guess the lawyers sent out the investigation for what I'm going to call like a Zoom call. The lawyers send out that information to the leaders of these congregations. And then someone who had received that email said, you know what would be good right now? If Mark O'Donnell was also in on this call. Because at least I know nothing's going to get covered up if Mark is on this call. So somebody, and I have no idea who it is, decided to send that Zoom call information over to Mark. So what does Mark do with that information? He knows he's not supposed to be on this call. However, he just got invited to join the call. So he called in. And if you've ever been on like a Zoom call, you know, especially if you're running it, you know you have access to who are the participants on this call. And if their names are not available to you, you know what number they are calling in from, right? But I guess there's enough people on this call that no one took attendance. No one decided to look through that list. So basically, O'Donnell is in on this call. He's using his own phone number. He calls in, whoever's running the meeting just sees the list. I guess everyone's here, and they start the call. And so I forgot if this was like literally after that call ended or maybe a day or two later, but Mark decides to go on YouTube where he chats with people just like I'm doing with you right now. And he decides to tell people what he heard on that phone call. And here's the thing, that video has since, the video of Mark talking to his followers, that has been taken down. However, my understanding, based on what I have seen from online comments and whatnot, it's nothing scandalous. It involves lawyers saying things like, hey, congregation leaders, let's discuss what's called a litigation hold, which is to say, do not destroy any documents. You're not going to come out of that one looking good. Like, make sure you preserve everything. Here's the stuff you need to have at your disposal. They also discussed how if the witnesses want to settle these cases, instead of taking them to court, if they want to just settle it and be done, here's what the process would be. Maybe here's how much it would cost the congregation, things like that. So here's the question I ask all of you. Mark joined that call. They did not know he joined that call. Is that illegal? Because that is what the witnesses are now saying. They filed a lawsuit against Mark O'Donnell saying, and I'm going to show you this here, he invaded their privacy. Here's just a glimpse of their lawsuit. As a result of O'Donnell's actions, each congregation in this county suffered a palpable injury, in fact, in its own right, consisting of the invasion of their legally protected interest in the privacy of its privileged communications. We have a right to speak privately with our lawyer, intrusion upon seclusion, and disclosure of those unlawfully intercepted communications causing reputational harm. There's a couple things that my first reaction when I saw that is like, reputational harm? This guy listens in on your phone call and you're like, you've hurt our reputation by talking to people about what you heard. No. He's not the reason your reputation sucks. The reason your reputation sucks, according to all the evidence we have, is because you are covering up for child predators. That's why you have a bad reputation. If someone is trying to get that information out to the public, that is not the problem here. But also invasion of their privacy. I do get that there is attorney-client privilege, and like that, those meetings are supposed to be confidential. But also, Mark didn't hack his way into the call, right? He was invited to the Signal chat, if you know what I mean. So his argument is like, I didn't like invade your privacy. You invited me. I was there. You did not kick me out. I didn't do anything wrong. That is what Mark is basically saying. By the way, this is the lawsuit that the witnesses filed against him. And as you could see, look at number 72. O'Donnell's actions also adversely affect each congregation's ability to something, and seek future legal advice from its attorneys via remote means. Meaning, we can't talk to our lawyers via Zoom anymore because who knows who's listening in, and you are forcing us to incur wasted time and money because now we got to meet with our lawyers in person because Mark won't let us have Zoom calls. No, you can have Zoom calls. Like, maybe look at who's signed in before you start the call. Have you thought about that? That doesn't sound like an invasion of privacy problem. That sounds like old people who don't know how to use the computer problem to me. But anyway, they filed their lawsuit. It never crossed their mind they could just, not give out login information or be be careful with how you dispense that information. But in this lawsuit, the thing that you should also know about it is how much money are they trying to get from him? And here's where it gets kind of frightening because they do this over and over. They say Mark broke 4 different laws. And this is just one of the things. Look at the whereas clause here. Whereas the plaintiffs, which is all of these Jehovah Witnesses congregations in the county, we demand judgment in our favor and against Mark O'Donnell, and we want an award of damages in an amount more in excess of $700,000. That's just for one of the charges. They have 4 crimes they say Mark committed, and they want $700,000 for each of them, plus attorney's fees and other costs. So that's where we're at. Like, they are saying they are entitled to like $2.8 million plus legal fees because he violated wiretapping laws and privacy laws, and he ruined their reputation somehow. I still don't get that one. But again, I'm not even joking about the Signal chat thing. You know that story. Pete Hegseth and his people, they basically accidentally invited a journalist to join their Signal chat where they were discussing war plans. And the journalist is like, there's no way this is actually Pete Hegseth and those guys discussing war plans. Because, like, how come they don't know I'm here? Shouldn't they know I'm here? And he didn't say anything. And they discussed the war plans. And eventually he's like, oh, they actually are that dumb that they don't know they invited me onto this. And he wrote a story about that. That is what O'Donnell is now arguing in his response. He is saying, I didn't hack into anything. Let me show you what his lawyer's response was to all this. Here we go. Check this out. Look at the highlighted bit. Mr. O'Donnell did not violate any laws because he was invited to the meeting and because the plaintiffs waived any expectation of privacy they may have had with respect to the meeting. Like, as soon as you handed out that information, if someone has it and they're listening to you, you don't have this privacy. You've given out the information to join you. So this is kind of the argument Mark is making. He also says this is important. Mark says in that response, they were aware of his presence shortly after the phone call ended. Is it because they checked the logs? I don't remember. Is it because he was talking about it on YouTube? Well, at that point you figure, oh, now they figured it out. But here's what's important. They did not indicate any sort of concern at that point. They didn't tell him to take down his YouTube video where he discussed what was said until like a year later. So it couldn't have been that big of a deal. He also argued that a lot of the stuff he said in the YouTube video was stuff he knew before the call even occurred. So the reason I bring all this up right now is this week, Mark O'Donnell issued a press release where he says Jehovah's Witnesses sue the editor of this website for millions of dollars, which is true. And I just want to point you down here. In the litigation, the witnesses have demanded I name every Jehovah's Witness I've communicated with in the last 5 years regarding the faith of the witnesses. So, like, they want him to spill the beans about all the apostates who have come out to him, and probably including who invited you onto that phone call. Obviously, that would reveal my journalistic sources, and I will not do so. As a reporter, protecting my sources is essential. Because of this, I have been forced to hire expert legal counsel for my defense, with costs expected to be more than $150,000. But he says at the bottom here, my mission has always been to shed light on these crimes, force change, and do so without cost to the public. While I am limited in what I can say now, I'm grateful that the public can see what has happened for themselves. And he includes some of the stuff with the case. So that's where we are at right now. I will tell you, Mark O'Donnell has not asked anyone to make donations yet. Okay. There's a lot of people who want to pitch in, especially on the XJW subreddit. But right now, it seems like O'Donnell's goal is just to make sure people know what's going on. I did reach out to him for comment a few days ago. He did not get back to me. I'm kind of curious why he's putting this out there now, since the lawsuit and his response to the lawsuit, all that stuff happened like late last year. I'm not sure why he's putting this out there right now. So I'm curious about that. But even without those answers, this is a case worth watching. A journalist was given access to a phone call by a participant, and he reported on what he heard. And now a wealthy religious group is trying to bankrupt him and scare him away, I assume, from doing the work he does, which makes them look bad because he's interested in the facts. It's appalling behavior from a group of people who are only on that phone call because they were discussing with their lawyers how to deal with allegations involving children. That bad stuff that was committed by their leaders or covered up by their leaders. And instead of looking in a mirror and asking themselves, are we the bad guys here? They're going after the one person in the whole story who is actually doing everything in his power to help survivors and prevent further abuse. I believe Mark said that this is going to trial, and the trial date has been set for October. So that's the next time something big is going to happen, unless something changes before then. But it's worth keeping an eye on this, and I'll alert you if I hear anything more. But yeah, I'll leave it there. What questions we got for this story? The JW standard of evidence for abuse makes action nearly impossible. Consequently, abuse is not really dealt with and festers. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here. One of the things that the Jehovah's Witnesses have said is that if you want to make an allegation against someone, there's like a 2-witness rule. Like 2 people have to say, yes, this happened before anyone will take you seriously. And that means if there's a perpetrator and a victim, and the only person who's saying what happened is the victim, well, that's only one witness. Too bad, you're out of luck. I mean, this is the sort of thing people have had to put up with in the witnesses. So yeah, their standard of evidence for abuse means they're really not equipped to handle this in any meaningful way. Also, the people you would talk to about this are not trained to do anything like this, making it even worse. And it's an insular community by and large. So they don't want to involve law enforcement if they don't have to. There are varying rules about recording talks without permission. State laws vary. Yeah, and I'm not sure what the confidentiality thing is in Pennsylvania. It may be a 2-party state. Both sides have to agree to be recorded. But again, Mark's argument is I was invited to the call. I did not illegally hack into it or join the call and record it without their permission. They knew it was being recorded. I knew it was being recorded. And again, I was invited to the phone call. So I think that's his argument there, that he didn't break any rules about recording the call or joining it, even if they didn't know he was there. Looking into an open window from a sidewalk is not an invasion of privacy. If they want privacy, they should take reasonable steps to make it so. Yeah, and in this case, you don't have to do anything weird. Do what everyone does when you're on a private video chat, which is go look at who's in the room and make sure it's the few of you. It's not that hard. If there's a name you don't recognize, a number you don't recognize, just kick that person off. Like, I've been on enough video calls to know how it works, and I'm older than 20, so I should not know how computers work. They can figure this out. If anyone other than a client was listening in on a client call of mine, I'd have a case. And this, I'm curious, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about if you're in this. But if that information about joining the client meeting was given to someone else by one of your clients, I don't know. Would you still have a case? And again, this is what they're hashing out in the courts. And Mark feels he's in the right here as a journalist, as someone who was given this information. I don't know. The child abuse part is more important. Yeah, than someone joining in on the phone call, I would agree. My interest is in the anti-Scientology area. The abuse to children is super dangerous in that cult. Kids are adults in little bodies. Yeah, I mean, we're not even getting into all the Scientology stuff. It's weird. I haven't heard anything about that group lately, which is never good. Like they kind of come and go in spurts in terms of when they're in the news. And if they are in the news, well, that can't be good. And if they are not in the news, oh no, that might be even worse. Privilege can be waived by a client, and the client waived it when they invited the third party in. Again, I don't know what the law is in this regard, but yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Thanks for that.